All right, hello there, thrill seekers. What is Buddhist intuition? What is it? What is it good for? How is it recognized? How does it relate to practice? Can it be cultivated? We're going to answer all these questions after 14 seconds of my little tribute to Ace Frehley, lead guitar of Kiss, with Shock Me. All right, in my last video, I did a little inadvertent, accidental tribute to Ace Frehley of Kiss, not knowing that he had passed away. And this time I did a deliberate tribute to Kiss. I bought that hoodie at the Kiss miniature golf. They have a miniature golf course inside the Rio Casino in where's that? Las Vegas. And I bought that there. I bought a Gene Simmons one too, and I lost it. I don't know where that went, but anyway, that was my Ace hoodie, so I hope you enjoyed that. Okay, I got a question in the emails, and it said, "Hi Brad, my question is about intuition. I've heard it spoken of as something positive and desirable, but it's not something that I seem to be in touch with in my own everyday life, poor me. So, intuition, what is it? What is it good for? How is it recognized? How does it relate to practice? Can it be cultivated? And of course, please let me know if this is something you've previously covered." I don't know if I've covered this. I probably have covered this. But intuition was one of those words that Nishijima Roshi used a lot. My teacher, Nishijima Roshi, in case those of you who don't know. He used the word intuition, intuitive, all those words constantly. And sometimes I was confused by what he meant by that. So I'm going to read you something that I found in a booklet of his, which is called Zazen, A Better Way of Experiencing Pain, a talk by Gudo Wafu Nishijima at Montpellier in France, November 2002. This whole booklet can be found at shobogenzo.net, which is a website which was put together or something, but it's under the auspices of Mike Lutchford, who was one of Nishijima Roshi's other Dharma heirs. And it's a really good resource for a lot of stuff about Nishijima Roshi and Shobogenzo and all kinds of stuff. So you can go there and you'll find the links for this. And if you want to read the whole pamphlet, you can do that. I think it's a pretty good pamphlet. It's kind of interesting, especially the title of it, A Better Way of Experiencing Pain. But the section I want to read doesn't have that much to do with pain, so let me read it to you. Okay, he says, "Of course, when Gautama Buddha was alive, there was no scientific knowledge like we have in the 21st century. Therefore, it was impossible for human beings to know any scientific explanations for Zazen until the last century or so. But fortunately, in the 20th century, scientific research developed enormously, and many very important advances occurred in the areas of psychology and physiology. Therefore, I think it is a very happy situation for us to be able to find some scientific explanations of Zazen on the basis of psychology and physiology." So this was very important to him. Nishijima Roshi did not like to talk in terms of mystical Eastern-sounding stuff. He liked to talk in terms of psychology and physiology. It wasn't that he was denying the sort of mystical aspects, the inexplicable, the ineffable aspects of Zazen. He talked about those a lot. But he didn't like to dwell on those kind of funny words. So let's read more of what he says. "The Theory of Unconsciousness," The Theory of Unconsciousness is the title of the section. "Sigmund Freud established a theory about unconsciousness, and I have found his theory very useful in understanding the meaning of Zazen on the basis of modern psychology. This is because we sometimes find theories in Buddhism that seem a little mystical and difficult to understand on the basis of reasonable consideration. For example, Buddhism reveres the human intuitive ability very much and calls it prajna." So you've probably heard the word prajna if you've ever study Buddhism at all. Prajna Paramita Sutra, the Heart Sutra. Well, the Heart Sutra is part of the Prajna Paramita Sutras, the great intuitive wisdom sutras. Which it calls prajna in Sanskrit. Pra means before and jñā means knowledge or consideration. Therefore, prajna means before consideration, and it suggests the human intuitive ability to grasp reality directly before consideration. I think that in European civilization, human intuitive ability is not so revered, and he would probably include American civilization too, but he was speaking in France. And that intellectual ability is that intellectual ability is revered much more than our intuitive ability. That's how it's supposed to be said. But in Buddhism, we revere intuitive ability much more than intellectual consideration. Before noticing the theory of the unconsciousness, I couldn't understand why Buddhism reveres intuitive ability so much. But after studying Freudian ideas about the unconsciousness, I think you probably would rather say the unconscious, I could understand that when our autonomic nervous system is balanced, the suppressed ideas we have in our body and mind evaporate and intuitive true decisions emerge. So once again, he is equating intuition with prajna. So if you study Buddhism, you've heard prajna, the word prajna used a lot probably. And it sounds very mystical and Eastern, and it's Sanskrit, and it gives us an idea of something that's like far away and crazy, and maybe not crazy, but something that we're not used to experiencing. And when we hear the word intuition, it sounds like people use the word intuition all the time, feminine intuition and all these kind of things. And I'm not sure that the word intuition and prajna actually map onto each other, 100%. But the problem with language is every time you use a word, what is that? There's that weird quote from Alice in Wonderland, which I can't remember. But if I use a word, it means what I choose it to mean or something like that. Maybe somebody will tell me what that is. But there is that. I mean, when we use a word, it means what we choose it to mean. Now, you have to pay some attention to the standard meaning of a word and have to understand it. But when talking about something like this, you kind of have to choose the words that you want to convey the teaching that you want to convey. Does that make sense? So you can't use the words willy-nilly and randomly. But on the other hand, as I said, Nishijima Roshi preferred to use English words that were in common usage rather than Sanskrit words, which sound very high and mighty. So how do you... Well, let's see what the guy's questions were. Let's see. What is it? Okay, what is it? I think we've kind of talked about. What is it good for? Well, what is it good for? Nishijima Roshi used to say a lot of times that when we are faced with a situation, we immediately know exactly what to do. We immediately know the right thing. And he would say this a lot, and I would sit there listening to him going, what? I don't immediately know what to do. I'm confused all the time. I don't know what the hell to do with most of the time when I'm confronted with something. And what he was talking about there is the intuitive sense. The intuitive sense pops up immediately, and you see a situation, and intuitively you know what to do. You know what your role in this situation is, and you know what to do, and if you are in touch with your intuition, then you go and do it. Let's see. I think maybe if we go to the next question, we'll get it. How is it recognized? Now, this is the problem. This is the problem that I had when listening to Nishijima Roshi saying that we immediately know the right thing to do at any juncture, at any point in our lives when something comes up, when a decision has to be made. We know what the right decision is. I always felt like, you stupid old man, you have no idea. I have no clue what to do most of the time, and I'm just sitting there going, oh my God, I don't know what to do. And I was I was one of these people who had a very indecisive nature. It would manifest in a lot of stupid ways. Like I'd go to a record store and be like, should I buy this album or should I not buy this album, or something stupid like that. But it would also manifest in much more important ways, which were much more meaningful situations, but we won't go into that because that gets a little personal and weird. But it would turn up all the time. I would have this indecision. Now, here's what I think happens. And this is not from Nishijima Roshi. This is from my own listening to him and kind of thinking about what happens in my life and doing loads of zazen. How do we recognize intuition is the question. The question is, you do a lot of zazen. That's the answer, sorry. The answer is, you do a lot of zazen. If you do a lot of zazen, this helps to, as Nishijima Roshi would say it, balance the autonomic nervous system, and you become more able to recognize intuition when it happens. And I don't know if anybody ever gets 100% there. Probably there's some people who get 100% there. I'm not 100% there, but I'm better than I used to be. The problem is there is habit. Nishimori Roshi used to talk about habit, and when he used the word habit, he meant a much bigger thing than like, I have a habit of picking my nose. He meant that we have habitual ways of reacting to things and habitual sort of go-to solutions for problems and whatever, and you picked them up from your parents, and you picked them up from society and what you read and blah, blah, blah. And they're all in there, and those are in the world of thought. And what I believe happens, and what I've seen happen, is you have the intuition, and right behind it comes a thought. So you have the intuition, you know exactly what to do, but boom, here comes a thought and goes, hey, maybe you should do this, or maybe you should do that, or maybe you should do the other thing, or maybe you should do this thing, or the third thing, or whatever. And so it gets very confusing. And so the way to recognize intuition is unfortunately not that easy, but you have to learn to quiet that thinking mind. Or if you can't exactly quiet the thinking mind, because that's always, people who instruct meditation always tell you to do that, and I always go, what the hell are you talking about? You can't always quiet the thinking mind, but you can get to a point where the thinking mind becomes less important, where thoughts are just thoughts. And that was one of the greatest revelations I ever had. I talked about Kensho experiences in the last talk, and I don't know if this counts as a Kensho experience, but at some point in my practice of Zazen, it just occurred to me that thoughts are just thoughts. All of my thoughts. No matter how big and important or vital they seem to be, they're just thoughts that occur in my mind. They are the action of karma, if you want to talk about it in Buddhist terms, or just habit. Habit and karma are kind of similar situations. So it's just a habitual response that comes up, and you kind of get mixed up with that. But you can learn to kind of go, okay, I'm not going to listen to all this stuff that thought is doing, and I'm going to listen to intuition. And there's a different quality to intuition than to thought. It's different from thought. How to recognize it? I mean, there's no easy formula I can give you. You kind of know when you know. It's sort of like riding a bike. You know when you got the balance right because you didn't fall over. It's not quite as clear cut as that, but there is a difference in quality between the intuitive response and the thought response. And if you can learn to recognize that, and like I say, the best way I know of is to practice Zazen a lot, and to kind of, when you're practicing Zazen, one of the things you're doing is opening the hand of thought, or thinking the thought of non-thinking, as Dogen put it. What you're doing is you're learning to put away thought, because it's kind of inevitable. Even if somebody doesn't teach you to do this or instruct you to do this, if you do Zazen long enough, you'll realize that thought is just a big annoyance, when you're doing Zazen, and you're going to have all kinds of thought. And the only thing to do about them is learn to kind of ignore them. And if you ignore them, it's like ignoring a little kid who's screaming about getting a lollipop, and eventually he runs out of steam and stops screaming. I don't want to. That sounds cruel. Anyway, it's kind of like that. It's just this noise that's going on, and you learn to ignore it and let it happen, but not pay much attention to it. And that's how you learn to recognize intuition, because you've stopped paying so much attention to thought, and then you're paying more attention to intuition. So let's look at the other question. How is it recognized? I think I just said that. How does it relate to practice? I think I just said that. It is part of practice. Practice develops intuition. And can it be cultivated? Yeah, it can be cultivated, but I don't know, the kind of, when people say cultivate something like that, they sort of, often it's goal-oriented. So you're imagining the perfect intuitive state, and you're making your effort to make that happen. And that's probably not a good strategy, because you're still back in that realm of thought. You're still in the realm of imagining what intuition is. So yeah, the only way to cultivate it is what I just said. You do a lot of Zazen. You notice that your thoughts are just thoughts. You learn to open the hand of thought and let them go. And then you are able to recognize intuition when it comes across. And as I say, my own experience doing Zazen for 40 some years is that, I'm not 100% at it. I feel like Nishijima Roshi might have been close to 100% at it, just observing his way of doing things. But then again, he had much more experience with Zazen than I do. I think some people do get to the point where they really truly see exactly what to do at any situation. I don't. I sometimes get caught up in things and caught up in thoughts and do the wrong thing, and etc. etc. But a long-term practice of Zazen will help you get better at this, and getting better at this is really, to me, it's been a lifesaver. There's a story I related in, I think, my book Sit Down and Shut Up, and it had to do with I've been married before. I had a first wife and a second wife. So it had to do with a conversation I was having with my wife when I was in Japan. And she had said something. And immediately, it's one of those situations where immediately I had the perfect response, like the perfect, gotcha response to what she said. And suddenly I recognized that if I said that gotcha response, that was just going to make the argument we were having continue. And it was not going to be pleasant, and it wasn't going to be good, and it wasn't going to be triumphant for me. It was just going to make things worse. So I just shut my mouth and I didn't say anything. I didn't say anything at all. I don't know. I might have, I didn't try to give her the silent treatment or anything, but I just decided not to say that. Maybe I said something else. I don't remember. But that was one of the first times when I realized, oh, that's intuition. That's what happens when you pay attention to intuition. You notice something that it comes up right away. This is what to do in this situation. What to do in this situation that I just described is not say the gotcha response. I in the book, I think it was Sit Down and Shut Up. Anyway, in the book, I likened it to that. There was a scene in Seinfeld, if anybody ever remembers Seinfeld. There was an episode where George Costanza comes up with the perfect response to somebody's sarcastic comment, but he comes up with it too late, and he keeps trying to recreate the situation again so that he can use his perfect response that he thought of later. It was kind of like that. You don't ever think of the perfect response at the right time, but I did. I had the right one. I don't remember what it was. I don't remember what she said and what I said or what I was going to say. But anyway, that's just the kind of thing. And just noticing what to do in this situation is it takes care of so many problems. So all I can do is advise you to do more Zazen and start to learn to recognize that intuitive response. And like I say, it's of a different quality from thought. And I can't tell you it's like green instead of blue or some stupid thing like that. It's a different quality, and it comes up and it's clear. So that's intuition. That's prajna. And of course, prajna, has much bigger and deeper meanings that we could go into if we want to be really mystical, but I don't want to get that way on this video, so I'm going to stop right there. All right, if you want to contribute to me making more videos like this, you can go to the URL that you're seeing on the screen below, or that you will hear if you are listening to the audio version of this, and it is hardcorezen.info/donate. That is hardcorezen.info/donate. That is where you will find links to my PayPal and Patreon accounts, and those are really right now my only way of making a living. And I appreciate your support, but as always, you don't got to support me if you don't want to. All right, we will see you again next time. Have a good time all the time. Bye. Hey Ziggy, how you doing? Do you have intuition? Do you have intuition what to do with this finger? No, you don't. But you have a weird mouth. All right, Ziggy, we'll talk to you later. I think dogs have intuition, don't you? You know what to do all the time.